This is best friend of the show, Monica Kubina, artist and colorist on Batman: The Adventures Continue. And you're listening to the DCAU review, hosted by Cal and Liam, streaming at DCAUreview.com and on your favorite podcast app.
Welcome, everybody, to episode 373 of the DCAU review. I am one of your hosts, Cal. With me, my good friend and good brother, Liam. Liam, we are continuing on here with our month of spooky, scary, creepy Batman Caped Crusader reviews as we lead up to Halloween, the spookiest time of the year. At least that's what I'm told. And after last week's really incredible review, we got to sit down, of course, with best friend of the show, Monica Kubina, and talk all about the introduction of the Harley Quinn character and all the psychological torture that she had on those mean millionaires of Gotham City. We are moving more into more traditional scary things this week with this week's episode.
Absolutely, yes. We get into a world, whether our Dark Knight wants to admit it or not, we are fully in the realm of the mystical this week as a certain ghostly figure is haunting certain citizens of Gotham, as we will get to in the episode Night Ride. So a lot to discuss here, and some big moments, not just for the type of character Batman faces off with, but also some emotional beats that we'll talk about as well. So a lot to get into with this here Night Ride.
That's right. Before we get into that, Liam, we of course get the official Internet Movie Database IMDb synopsis for this week's episode, which originally dropped on the great Jeff Bezos's Amazon Prime streaming service. A wonderful streaming service, if I do say so myself. On August the 1st, 2024, Liam, we will be reviewing this episode and get our own synopsis here in just a second after we do the IMDb synopsis, which is, of course, brought to you by buymeacoffee.com/DCAU review. Head over to buymeacoffee.com/DCAU review, the best way to support this very podcast. Perhaps you're feeling very generous and you're feeling like, you know what, last week's episode was so great. Thank you guys for bringing best friend of the show, Monica Kubina, back on. It was great to hear her here. We want to say thank you for that. There's a way you can support the podcast with that, with a one-time support option. Or perhaps you want to join our ever-growing list of monthly supporters and join us at one of our 3 different levels, all of which get you some fantastic perks. The top level, which is our super friend level, of course, though, gets you the most perks and the best perk of all, which is being able to ask a question and hear your answer on any episode that we're talking about. And it's always going to be about the episode that we're reviewing. So if you're interested in supporting the podcast, if you want to support Liam and I and what we do here, and you enjoy what we do, head over to buymeacoffee.com/DCAU review. And whether it's a one-time support or a monthly support, please support the podcast today.
Absolutely. So this is the synopsis for Night Ride, which was written by Mark Bernardine, directed by Christopher Berkeley, easy for me to say, music by Frederick Weidman, and animation by Studio IAM. And that synopsis reads as such. After a series of robberies in Gotham, Batman wrestles with the possibility that the culprit might be from beyond the grave. Meanwhile, Harvey Dent's morality is tested. A generous campaign donation comes in from a most nefarious source. Sorry, if you throw meanwhile in there, I drop into the 60s Batman guy.
Yeah, it's understandable.
That's a little cheat code for any future IMDb synopses that I have to read.
There we go. Not the greatest. A little bit. It started out just fine. I liked the little cliffhanger spookiness of it, but then we really fell off the end of a cliff there. Not great. Please see us after class. IMDb synopsis. Author. Liam will try to do it a little bit better justice with our own review of the episode here as we start things off with a pair of security guards who are driving an armored truck through the slums of Gotham City. The van is full of charity money, as we learn, and the two security guards are sort of bemoaning the downturn of Gotham as a whole. At least one of them is, and the other one is sitting there quietly listening, talking about how the industry has left Gotham. There used to be a paperclip factory, and now it's gone. And wouldn't you know it, as she is bemoaning this turn of Gotham City, they look in the mirror and they see a man on a horse chasing after them. He's not just any man, though. He's a man in a mask and a three-cornered hat and a long flowing jacket, and he is bright blue. He's glowing blue.
Hmm.
So, of course, what are you going to do? So, in the midst of this, he rides up next to, causing the van to stop. In the midst of it, of course, the van crashes, and this causes a big disturbance. He makes away with all of the money, wouldn't you know it? He does spare the lives of our two security guards who are left to tell the tale of what happened that fateful night. And apparently tell them they did, as it is quickly makes the news as we cut to after our credits. Batman and Alfred are discussing it's Batman and Lucius Fox are talking business in in Bruce's office. They're talking about the future of some of Bruce's investments. Lucius is talking to him about the success that he's had. Alfred joins them, and they begin talking about the mysterious ghost sighting that is being reported.
So, what do you make of these so-called ghost robberies?
Obviously some lunatic in a costume. What does a ghost need money for?
It's a good point. What about you, Pennyworth? You think ghosts are haunting Gotham City?
A city like this? I've no doubt. There are more things in heaven and earth, Horatio.
Didn't you have an uncle?
Indeed. Uncle Nigel was convinced he'd seen the spirit of his late wife wandering the moors outside of Axbridge.
Right. Looking for the dog. Patches.
Patches, where are
you?
I'm not sure which is stranger. Pennyworth believing in ghosts, or that you two are so chummy?
Bruce clearly does not believe that ghosts exist, believes it's something fanciful. Meanwhile, Alfred and Lucius bond over a memory that Alfred must have shared with Lucius at some point about how he had an uncle that once thought that he saw the ghost of his wife walking around calling for a dog. And it's interesting because, again, this is the story arc of Bruce, as we learn here, that he notices that Lucius is talking to Alfred, and he mentions that he doesn't know what's more disturbing, the fact that Alfred and him believe in ghosts as a possibility, or that Lucius is so chummy with the help. At which point Lucius is quick with his word to mention that he was taught to always recognize the help as real people. So there you go, Bruce. So we have a little bit of resetting here with Bruce's outlook on things, but he's not quite ready to buy it or the belief that ghosts are real. So Bruce isn't the only one reading the newspaper, however, as we see that we cut to Harvey Dent, who is on the phone and yelling about some articles that have hit the newspaper that apparently have targeted him in his re-election campaign for District Attorney of Gotham. His campaign manager enters the room just as he's kind of frustratedly hanging up the phone, and begins to share the news that, you know what, things aren't looking good. His numbers are starting to dip. They have to do something. Harvey's clearly getting desperate, but not quite sure what to do or where to turn. So as he leaves the office and goes to get into his car for the evening with his driver, who should be sitting in the back seat with him but old Rupert Thorne. And let's just say that Rupert has a deal to offer that I don't think he thinks that Harvey will be able to refuse.
Yeah, that's right. So here we get the word here that Thorne is very much aware of Harvey's recent campaign woes. he's down in the polls, and his money, his war chest, so to speak, is nearly empty, and he offers Harvey a little helping hand. And Harvey, of course, immediately points out that one, that why would he want to help Harvey when he's funding the incumbent mayor's campaign, which Thorne points out in his business, it's probably good that you grease palms on both sides of the aisle. No real world parallels to how politics work in our real world, in the real world. That never happens. But Rupert mentions that, and then of course Harvey does try to sort of push the hand away, so to speak, and mentions that he's not interested in that. If anything, he's running for mayor in order to try to take down people like Thorne and like the current mayor for their corruption. And Thorne backs off, but tells them that eventually he's gonna probably need a friend, and Thorne will be there to take the call when he's ready. So from there, we cut back to the Batcave, where Batman and Alfred are discussing the robberies a bit more, as Alfred sort of once again points out that there could be something more mysterious afoot here. Batman kind of blows him off, but before we can get too into the weeds on Alfred's theories, we cut to Harvey Dent trying to salvage his political aspirations. He's riding the subway or the rail system with the commoners of Gotham City, and is of course has a gaggle of press around him talking about how his campaign's not for the rich fuddy-duddies of the city. He's there for the single moms and the other people that are working hard, and that they just need a hand up, and he's going to be there to take care of them when he's the mayor. But before he can espouse much more of his plans as mayor to the press, the aforementioned gentleman ghost reappears on the tracks and teleports onto the train, much to the shock and horror of everyone on there, the commuters, the press, and Harvey himself.
Now that I have your attention, allow me to relieve you of your valuables. Billfolds, coin purses, pocket watches, in the saddlebags, if you please.
Here, take this and leave these people alone.
Oh no, sir. I wouldn't dream of taking a halfpenny from a man of your station. But I'll take everything this one has.
He begins to threaten and demand that the commoners give up their valuables. Harvey, to his credit, does sort of try to be the sacrificial lamb there, offering up his own wealth and valuables if the ghosts will simply leave the others alone. However, and this is where we get, I think, a really interesting twist to this version of the Gentleman Ghost. He's not interested. In fact, he says he would never ever attempt to rob a man of Harvey's station, that he's clearly a man of fine repute, and therefore he will not take Harvey's money, but he'll take every cent that the regular folk on the trains have. So he makes off with the ill-gotten gains, and teleports on to the ground below, where the Batmobile is there to chase him through the streets of Gotham. Bruce gives chase for quite a bit, and right when it seems like he has him at a dead end in the back of an alley, that darn ghost just goes right through the wall, and as he dissipates, a few embers and remains of the dollar bills that he stole are sort of floating through the air, and Batman's able to grab a piece of one of them. And he also notices, as he's chasing him, that the bag that he was putting all of the goods into has a certain crest on it. So we cut once again back to the Batcave as Alfred continues to throw out the like, "Hey man, this is a ghost, I'm pretty sure." and Batman just doesn't want to hear it. It's ridiculous. He says we have enough problems in the real world. We don't need to have to go inventing ghosts to be an additional issue. Though Alfred points out the old adage of once you have eliminated the impossible, whatever remains, however improbable, could be the case. So Alfred's not ready to give up on his ghostly theory just yet, but Bruce kind of cuts him off as he has drawn out a sketch of the crest and decides that he is going to go head out and do some research to see if he can figure out whose family crest this is, and whether or not that could lead him to the supposed ghost that is haunting the city at this moment. So we cut to Lucius Fox, who is arriving at this piece of property he mentioned that he was about to purchase this week. It's called Heritage Hill, and the man selling it to him happens to have the last name of Craddock, Chekhov's guy named Craddock, I guess. Here, as they discuss things, you can tell that the manor has been a bit run down, though it is mentioned that he has been. That it's been in the family for generations, but he feels it's time, as you mentioned. Lucius has big plans for it. He wants to tear it down, build low income housing, schools, parks, all of this. He has a lot of big plans for this area, so he's excited to get the pen to paper, so to speak, and make the purchase final. And we cut to Bruce researching at the library, because again, this is set in the 1940s. You can't just Google it. He has to go do some old-fashioned research here, where he comes across an old librarian named Wilma, who apparently knew Bruce as a lad, and remarks that the particular crest he's looking for wouldn't be in any books or any research in Gotham, because the Craddock family's actions were so heinous, apparently, that they were basically stricken from history, or at least Gotham's local history. And we get a little bit of backstory here as we find out that the gentleman Jim Craddock, who owned Heritage Hill originally, was suffice to say, not a big fan of the American Revolution. He was I guess he was a man after Benedict Arnold's own heart here, as he was very much siding with Queen and country over the colonies, and did not care for that Bill of Rights thing, or any other constitutions or anything that were being bandied about around the time of the American Revolution, and even went so far as to basically attack and murder people that were looking to do that. And so as Alfred and Bruce convene back in the car after he's left the library, Bruce mentions that they need to get to Heritage Hill right away, as he's now afraid that whatever this ghostly guy, whoever this guy pretending to be a ghost is, he clearly has some sort of axe to grind with anyone that would try to erase the Craddocks from history, or so they race off to Heritage Hill as he gets changed, as Alfred drives him to Heritage Hill, where Lucius and the young Mr. Craddock, or the descendant of the original Jim Craddock, are about to sign those papers, when the ghostly version of Nuns and Dynamite shows up to throw a little monkey wrench into their plans.
Literally out of the painting of Gentleman Jim Craddock comes this masked ghost man, who is none too happy, calls his offspring that we learn that is selling the property as I believe he mentions it's his great uncle, many greats before uncle, that was the one who brought shame to his family, gambled away his fortune, nearly lost the mansion to begin with. And here we see that crawling out of the painting just as he's about to sign over the deed to Lucius is the ghostly Jim Craddock, or at least someone who appears that way. So he shows up, and thankfully Batman shows up shortly thereafter, before the Gentleman Ghost can do any physical damage or harm to Lucius and or the other Craddock. However, Batman does his best in hand-to-hand combat against this Gentleman Ghost, who does find him formidable, but as Batman tries to throw a batarang, it goes directly through him, and then as he attempts to punch him, he cannot seem to land a punch. However, when he withdraws his hand from this ghostly figure, wouldn't you know it, it comes back completely frozen. The gentleman ghost offers Batman one final warning not to get involved with his business any longer, or next time he will not be so lucky, as he disappears into the fireplace, returning to the flames, and Batman is there with a frozen hand. So then we cut back to the Batcave where or sorry, before that, we see that Harvey Dent is being grilled by the press getting out of his car. They're asking him why he didn't do anything to defend the individuals riding the train. They ask him if he was just standing there, which poor Harvey, like if this isn't fake news media, he literally tried to like offer the ghost his money and tell them to leave the other people alone, and he at least did something. But the spin that the media here puts on it is one of this guy did nothing, and of course they're ready to eat him alive. So more bad news for our future potential mayor of Gotham City, who is getting absolutely destroyed by the media, who are accusing him of standing by and doing nothing, while the poor citizens of Gotham were robbed by this ghost. They're asking him why he didn't do anything. The media is just spinning fake news out here. He at least offered the guy some money, his own money, and told him to leave him alone. Sure, he didn't try to do anything to protect the people physically, but he's a politician. He's not a martial artist. He tried his best, but news media is doing their best to try and feed the flames of this story. They smell blood in the water, and they're ready to make our DA look even worse. So we see him continue to struggle with that. At that point, we cut back to Alfred in the Batcave treating Bruce with his icy hand. Bruce is trying to give Alfred pointers to make sure that he doesn't do any nerve damage. Alfred mentions that he's treated every wound that Bruce has ever had, so he kind of knows what he's doing here. I love a little Alfred sass right back to Bruce, and we learn that Batman at this point maybe starting to believe that this ghost is real, so he heads to a witch doctor.
Say we're closed, but you don't seem the sort who'd care.
If you're Linton Midnight, I need your help. I'm hunting
the gentleman ghost, formerly known as James Craddock. And you don't know how to catch a ghost.
Before today, I didn't believe they existed.
I appreciate a man willing to broaden his horizons.
Why would a ghost be stealing money? What could he need it for?
Every shade is different, but they're all echoes of their former selves. Some are tethered to where they lived or died. Others are doomed to repeat in death what they did in life. You want to be rid of Craddock? This book contains the rite of passage from this world to the next. You'll need two things. The original deed to Heritage Hill. Craddock believes he still has a claim in Gotham, so you need to burn that claim.
And the other thing?
The blood of a nobleman. Old ghosts, old magic. It wants what it wants, and this one wants blood. This magic, it will fight back. Even if you think you can handle it, it will find weaknesses you didn't know you had. A boon for a boon. I gave you what you needed. In exchange, you return this to me when it's done.
So he introduces himself later on. He sneaks in, of course. Of course he's going to sneak in. But he introduces himself as Linton Midnight, who maybe we'll talk a little bit about here, is an established DC character from the John Constantine Hellblazer series, but making his first appearance here in this series. So he mentions that ghosts are real, and obviously he deals with this every single day, so it kind of is just ho-hum to him. He offers Batman the ability to how he can safely and efficiently banish Gentleman Jim completely from this mortal coil, but does so with a bit of a bargain that Batman must do something for him. He hands him a vial. An empty vial, it appears, and tells Batman that when the time is right, he will know when to use it. So Batman takes the vial and the spell And then Bruce sneaks into and breaks it, or Batman breaks into and steals the deed to the mansion. He's able to get in the car with Alfred as they drive out to the property. And we learn that one of the things that was needed for this spell to banish Gentleman Jim to the Netherlands was the blood of a nobleman. And we learn a little bit more about Alfred, who tells a little bit about his story, that he is the distantly related to a nobleman, which surprises Batman. But as Alfred remarks, he's never asked anything about Alfred. So again, we're learning more about Alfred and Bruce's relationship here. Not quite the warm and friendly one that we see in so many other universes. But at this point, since Alfred is the nobleman has the nobleman's blood, we have the deed to the property, and we have Batman with a spell. We're ready to perform the ritual to ban Gentleman Jim, but as Midnight said, the darkness will fight back in this if Batman chooses to do this. So of course it's not easy. It seems to be going just fine as Batman reads the spell. Alfred cuts his hand with a batarang, leaving the blood. And just as Batman is about to light the deed on fire, wouldn't you know who appears but the Gentleman Ghost himself, right in the midst of this spooky graveyard where they're doing this ritual that's on the property where the mansion resides. The former burial plot, I believe, is what the nephew says at one point to Lucius. So Gentleman Jim, the Gentleman Ghost, takes his anger out on Batman. They begin to get into fisticuffs. Meanwhile, the deed blows away a little bit further into the graveyard. Alfred chases after it, and he begins to do his best to set the deed on fire as Batman does battle with the ghost as best as he can. It does appear at one point that Alfred is going to be able to set the deed on fire, but he's unfortunately not able to complete the duty. But at some point, Batman is able to overwhelm the ghost and complete the burning of the deed, which allows the Gentleman Ghost to burn up and disappear as into a black cloud. And Alfred and Batman begin to talk and seemingly celebrate, but wouldn't you know it, we're not done. Just like any good horror movie, the villain is not dead. The black cloud, literally the black cloud hanging over this graveyard, comes down and possesses Alfred, leaving Batman to go one-on-one with his own butler, who is got Batman's batarang in hand and doing everything he can to kill Batman. Gentleman Jim, possessing him, is able to speak through Alfred and tell him that he's hiding some secret from Batman. Wouldn't Batman like to know what that secret is? Alfred's able to power through momentarily and tells Batman to kill him before he overpowers Alfred, and Alfred kills Batman. Batman says never. He's never going to do it. He'll never kill Alfred. And then thankfully, he's able to, at the very last second, realize that. Meanwhile, while Batman and Alfred are sort of rolling through the graveyard, Batman looks over and sees the deed sitting there on the ground. Batman pulls out a flare gun, and it lands right on the mark, completely disintegrating the deed, thus causing Alfred to collapse, and once again the Gentleman Ghost to escape or to flee Alfred's body, flying into the air. Batman pulls out the empty vial that was given to him by Linton Midnight, and wouldn't you know it, the ghostly remnants fly directly into the vial. Batman pulls and corks it up as he runs over to Alfred to check on him as quickly as possible. He rolls Alfred over. Things are not looking good, but of course, the very last second, Alfred kicks out. He's there. He's alive.
Master Bruce.
You fool. What the hell were you thinking? I can't do this job without you.
Yes, Master Bruce. I know. I'm looking forward to a long bath, sir.
And Batman is furious with him, telling him he can't do this job without him. What was he thinking? And Alfred apologizes, which is a very weird moment between the two of them. But really, I think we'll talk about shows a little bit more of this Bruce character and where he is sort of mentally in this. As Batman and Alfred are sort of recovering, he looks over his shoulder, and who should be standing on the hill? A man in an all-white suit and white top hat. It's not the classic gentleman ghost. Nope. It's Linton Midnight, and he's there to collect his part of the deal as part of this somewhat deal with the devil that Batman made.
That's right. So they have a brief discussion here as Batman says a deal's a deal and hands over the little test tube that apparently contains Craddock's essence now. And we get a little illusion that Linton and Craddock have met before in some way, as we hear Craddock pleading with Batman not to turn him over to this Linton Midnight character. Batman asks what he plans to do with him. But Linton says, "You probably don't want to know." And Batman agrees as they go their separate ways. And then we have one final sort of epilogue to the episode here. The sort of the what's been brewing on the back burner is beginning to bubble to the surface here, as we get one last scene of Harvey back at the campaign headquarters as his campaign manager informs him that the war chest is empty. They're out of funds. He's getting killed in the polls because of the incident on the railway. And it looks like his campaign might be up the river without a paddle, as they say. So Harvey, in this moment, he has a kind of a freak out. He throws something at his at one of his campaign posters, cracking the glass in a interesting way. And then we see him slowly but surely pick up the phone and call someone and he tells his manager, tell Thorne he's got a deal. And that's where we fade to black on this week's episode. So even though our individual adventure is wrapped up quite nicely, we get a little bit of another nod to the fact that we're really just getting started on this here season here.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, Liam. So let's chat, shall we, a little bit about where we stand with this episode. I got to be honest with you. When I remember when we learned what some of the stories were going to be and some of the characters that they were going to use, I was very excited. I've always loved the look of the Gentleman Ghost character, especially the classic one where he's literally just like a monocle and a top hat without a face, and those classic white duds. And I was really excited. I think there was talk. There was maybe a Gentleman Ghost story that was originally written potentially for the Batman the Animated Series that never made it past it, like sort of the general idea phase. I don't think a script is ever written for it, but there's definitely talk of it. Obviously, he appears in the DCAU later on in Justice League Unlimited, but I was pretty excited about this episode. I was like, man, this is going to be so cool. And then I watched the episode, and I don't know, it just feels very strange. And not in like this is a good strange. It just kind of feels, especially with the rest of the way, the tone, I guess, for the other episodes, it feels very awkward. I I feel like the writers they wanted to introduce some more fantastical sci-fi things to this. They didn't want it to be they didn't every episode we've had thus far is very practical, very like, okay, this could have happened in a world in 1940 or whatever. But obviously, when you start getting into the more fantastical, you have to kind of start suspending disbelief. And I know the roots of the Batman character, especially in some of those early days of Detective Comics, and then again in the 70s, this is a story that would feel kind of right at home in the Denny O'Neil era of comics. But I don't know. I just feel. I don't know. It just kind of feels weird. It kind of tonally, it just doesn't quite fit. And I know we do have this kind of parallel here where we have the guy who is, classist to say the least. Like
Mhm.
he believes that the rich people should be rich and the poor people should be poor, and he's a ghost. He's haunting
He's
this
reverse
whole
Robin
place
Hood.
because he wants. Correct, right, exactly. And then you kind of have the dynamic that kind of parallels this with Harvey Dent trying to determine what road he wants to go down. Does he want to be the actual champion for the people like he's trying to paint himself, or is he willing to kind of give himself over to this darkness, this possession, if you will, which we see happen with Alfred. So there are some interesting parallels that are happening here, and ultimately what happens to Craddock when he's finally handed over at the end to Midnight. You know, what his fate will be. It's kind of left ambiguous. What Harvey's fate will be is a little ambiguous. Obviously, it plays out pretty quickly with the remaining episodes that we have here, but it is it is an interesting parallel between stories here, and I see what they were kind of trying to do, but it just feels like too much too quickly. I feel like with this, I kept waiting for the reveal to be like revealed to be how this ghost thing was happening. It was a projection. It was like, something that you would see in an episode of the Wild Wild West or something, where you have some sort of uh explanation that, okay, you kind of suspend disbelief about the technology for this time and place, but okay, you can kind of do it. You can fudge it if you try, but ultimately the fact that we're just, nope, it's a ghost, it's an actual real ghost, and Batman fights ghosts now, and Batman has to deal with what it means that ghosts are actually real. And we don't really even get all that. It's more about Batman's arc as how his relationship with Alfred is kind of how this goes for this episode. It just feels like there's a couple of jumbled different pieces here that don't quite fit together. And Alfred's sacrifice at the end doesn't mean very much for this episode, but long term it does mean something. It's just kind of jumbled and all over the place as far as what I felt. What about you?
Yeah, like I'm okay. Batman lives in a fanciful world at times. I know this one is more of a grounded take, or at least to start out it is more leaning into science fiction than into the mystical stuff until this episode. I'm not opposed to it, but it does feel like the way the episode is set up, just logically, it's like there should be another reveal here. And for a second I thought, okay, are they going to try to make you think that it's not a ghost and that it's the descendant of Craddock that's doing all of this? But they
Oh yeah,
don't.
he's a red herring for sure.
Right, but he's in it so briefly, because you just see the one scene of him and Lucius meeting, and then a minute later the ghost attacks them both. So maybe if there was a little bit more time in the episode where you thought it could be him, at least before then you go to the big reveal of, no, it is actually a literal ghost. That would have been kind of a fun double twist. Maybe that goes down to like runtime and what they had time to pull off here. But yeah, like I just think it's interesting if you're going to go full mystic. And like I said, and we'll certainly talk about the visuals of it. There is some fun parts of that come with it. I definitely agree that this has like that dark gothic 70s detective comics, like a Steve Englehart type, or Neil Adams, as you said, type look to it or feel to it. I can certainly see that story working there. It's just interesting when everything has been played so straight so far, to suddenly introduce ghosts and witch doctors and all of this kind of out of nowhere. It does feel like a little bit of a whiplash. And obviously it's hard to say, because again, this series has only gone 10 episodes, but the creators who have worked on it, Bruce Timm, James Tucker, certainly have talked about things they don't really want to do. They're not sure they want to do anything with, we'll talk about Robins in a couple weeks. They didn't really, they kind of hemmed and hawed, or didn't, said they weren't really interested in having this Batman crossover with other superheroes. So for the idea that we're trying to keep this grounded isn't necessarily a problem, but it is interesting to then suddenly introduce a ghost. And again, you're either waiting for the reveal to be, it's not really a ghost. It's like you said, it's a projector. It's, it's there's some sort of scientific sci-fi mumbo jumbo reason why this can happen, or at the very least you might expect them to try, maybe go a little bit longer of trying to figure out who the culprit could be, and then you have, like I said, the double twist where it really is a ghost in the end is interesting as well. But I mean, like I said, it's fun. And then but yeah, I think that being the sort of the overall premise of the episode, and that does get most of our runtime, is Bruce and Alfred trying to sort of puzzle this thing out. The backup plots of it, I think, are what are most interesting in some ways. That being the Harvey, Harvey sort of going back on his morals and accepting the help from Thorne as he's just sort of besieged by the seemingly limitless spending of his opponent, and also the press that doesn't seem to want to cut him a break, and whatever his public perception already is. And then so, like, I think that's beat of the story is interesting. It doesn't really intersect at all. That's kind of just a thread to pick up in future episodes, other than the fact that the gentleman ghost robs the train while he's on it. And then yeah, the other bit to talk about certainly is the Bruce and Alfred stuff, which is, I think you really get the sense here, and I think we talked about this in previous episodes, but the journey that Bruce is on in this, it's not just getting in touch with his softer side, learning to be nicer, or even like learning to accept help. It's how he views like his fellow man, like, and especially the people that he is working with, whether that's Gordon or Barbara, or in this week's episode Alfred, where it's like he's the help, right? He says it in that first scene, like he doesn't really view Alfred as a person. And so like this moment, and then he has the reaction he has when he thinks Alfred dies or nearly dies at the end. It's very much, it sounds like a spoiled child, like so even though he's gone through the physical training to become Batman, he really, you can see like this version of Bruce has not done the emotional healing to even be like close to a functional person, even just within his this small circle of him and Alfred, of knowing who the real Bruce is. Like he doesn't it's this very sort of spoiled, like he's kind of a spoiled brat, which I think is an interesting element, because often that's the facade we see for a Bruce Wayne, but not the real him. Whereas in this world, we kind of see that no, he really is kind of like, he doesn't really think of Alfred as a person. He thinks of him as the help until this this event happens.
Yeah, it's very clear he's not. I mean, it's clear from episode 1 here, but we talked about it a little bit last week with Monica. But his like, he's not really in touch with his emotions. He shoved his emotions down. He's very much like he's like a soldier. He's on mission. He doesn't have time to think about real human emotions. So much so that in last week's episode, when he's apologizing to Barbara for the loss of her friend, it sounds like a robot. And then in this episode, even when he's interacting with this librarian who's known him for quite a long time, apparently, she at the very end puts her hand on top of his hand and says that she's sorry, that she never got a chance to say she was sorry about what happened. And Bruce, he sort of like jumps back and is it kind of snaps him out of, I think, the detective mode for a second, and he just says, "Oh, thanks." And then that, like, he's just so awkward. Like, he's so separated himself from his emotion and what happened to him, and sort of put all of these feelings in a box and shoved it so far under the proverbial bed at this point that you can't see it, and packs so much stuff in front of it that I think when the emotions come out too, you can see the intensity. Yes, it's absolutely this entitlement that he has, but I think it's also an intensity that he has because he's so emotionless as Batman, as this character, his Bruce persona, even though it's the, it's the playboy, you don't see much emotion other than a little bit of anger in the Catwoman episode, come out. So I think some of it is just when he allows his emotions to come out, they're so intense, and you see him. It sounds like anger. Like he comes out at Alfred here at the end. He's furious that Alfred would tell him to kill him, like, and doesn't he realize what he needs Alfred for? And it's not, he can't tell him he needs him in an emotional sense. It's, I need you to help me do this job. Like, this is the most important thing. It's not that I need you as like a human being. I need you as the person that helps me do the job that I do. So I think there is some of that is entitled, but I also think some of it is just because he's so emotionless as Batman and keeps no emotion at the forefront, that when those emotions come up, it's just an intensity level that he just can't control, which leads to awkward interactions and anger and a lot of other things that happen when we take trauma and bury it underneath of our feelings, you know.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, as far as the episode is concerned, I do think that, like I said, there's some interesting parallels here, but I think I was expecting something a little more from the Gentleman Ghost story. It does also feel, it's interesting that they introduced this Hellblazer character. Like, this is the first crossover character that we get in the show,
Mm-hmm.
letting us know that there's a bigger universe, and it's like, if it was John Constantine, I think I would have crapped my pants. I was like, "Oh my gosh, it's John Constantine! This is great!" Or
Mm-hmm.
Jason Blood, or something like that. But it's just this very deep cut of Linton Midnight, who also known as Papa Midnight and whatever in the Hellblazer comics.
Mm-hmm.
That's sort of a rival to John Constantine. So it feels to me like, I understand that they didn't want to do a whole bunch of major crossovers, especially right away, with other superheroes, but I think it would have been nice to have somebody that's a little more well known here in the show. But beggars can't be choosers. All that to be said, though, I was a little disappointed with how the episode ends up turning out. It does feel kind of just awkward in places. So for all those reasons, I gave Plot a 4 out of 10. What about you?
Yeah, I gave it the exact same score actually of a 4. Yeah, like I said, I think there's all of that stuff we just talked about the Batman and Alfred of it all, the and his emotional journey as well as the Harvey stuff. That's good and that's really compelling. But yeah, I just think the fact that we just had a ghost like, and like I said, I don't feel like they play up the mystery of it enough. There's just, or at least maybe what they do with it is just too samey, because it just keeps cutting to Bruce and Alfred in the Batcave being like, Master Wayne, ghosts are real. No, they aren't. And then you just do that like 3 times, and then Batman finally has this encounter where he's like, all right, maybe it's a ghost. So yeah, I wish yeah, maybe there was more time to play with the mystery of it all, if in fact you're going to go down the supernatural route. But c'est la vie, as they say in France.
All right, then let's move on to our second category of the day, which is going to be animation and visuals. And I believe you said, is it Studio AIM who's responsible for this?
Yeah, not AOL Online Instant Messenger. It's IAM. So perhaps
Yeah, IAM.
perhaps
Okay.
the front man for the Black Eyed Peas involved.
I was gonna say Studio Will I Am. Got it. Yes. So as far as the animation and visuals are for this show, as far as the animation and visuals for this episode, I think you do have a lot of interesting things, certainly when your main character or your main villain is a ghost. So certainly some interesting visuals here. There's a possession of one of our characters, which is freaky and creepy and interesting. We have a couple of intentionally foreshadowing imagery here involving Harvey Dent that we talked about. And you have a couple of other interesting visuals that I think are probably nods to the classic Gentleman Ghosts and other lore in the DC here. But yeah, let's start things off here as far as the animation is concerned, and then maybe we can talk about the different visuals, because I think the thing that I've learned in reviewing this show is that you kind of do have to separate it's one category, but it feels very different in this show just because of the stiffness and the lower budget that we have for our characters, and the way that the characters just don't really move very well in scenes, and there's not much, like, they're just kind of stiff and stagnant when they're conversing, and a lot of the dialogue happens between our characters in sequences where they're not moving. Um, so as far as the animation is concerned, I think the highlights are the Gentleman Ghost, which I think is probably a combination of CGI with the cell shading over top of it, especially when he's on the horse, and then standard animation. I think he's interesting. I much prefer the traditional Gentleman Ghost look than this three-cornered hat guy with a mask. I'm not going to lie. I feel like this was a huge downgrade in the way that this character looks. Obviously, it ties into the lore of this character a little bit more with his Revolutionary War status here, but I did not love the actual look of the character. He kind of looks like the Red Hood wearing a pirate hat. Like, that's kind of what it reminds me of.
Yeah. Yeah, I love the blue glow. I think that's a fun we talked about that a little bit with Monica last week, how sometimes flat this show can look visually, in some cases literally with the animation, but even just from a color perspective, just so having that bright blue hue, that not only does his character have it, but when they're in those darker environments, he is also kind of giving off his own light. He's his own light source, which is kind of fun to see that reflected on the other characters as well. So that's fun. But yeah, and again, for what they did with, like I said, making him like this anti Robin Hood redcoat character, I think it's fine, but you almost wish maybe they would have gone with it's like I said, I think Gentleman Ghost has just always been, even I think before he was in Justice League or we had any comics, like we knew who this character was somehow when we were kids, and I was just like, white suit, top hat and monocle, no face is like the coolest design for a villain ever. So like I think it's hard to improve on that. So I almost wish maybe they would have gone with maybe an original character that maybe had those elements. But obviously it's, you get the name recognition. And like I said, we're not opposed to an alternate take as far as the characterization, but yeah, the design, it's hard. But like I said, I do like the blue hue over everything, and him riding on the horse is pretty good. I do think that's maybe some of the best animation we've gotten all season, is that Batmobile chase sequence, as far as just the fluidity and the speed being communicated in the animation. I think a little better. It feels a little less stiff than some of those other beats that we've talked about in previous episodes. So that's a credit to them. But yeah, as far as the Gentleman Ghost design in and of itself, I like the blue coloring, the suit. Yeah, I think it's strange because it's like the idea of giving him eyes, I can understand, of like, okay, well, we need him to be able to express and emote and all that. But like, yeah, I don't know. I don't necessarily think it does much, because he doesn't have a mouth or a nose or anything. So it is really just the eyes that you get out of it. So yeah, he's still not that expressive as a character. So I don't necessarily know that this redesign really helped you tell your story any better. Maybe if he was like phasing between the Gentleman Jim Craddock look and this, ghostly form, it could have been interesting. Or certainly we get one glimpse of the mask comes off as he's being exorcised at the end of the episode. But yeah, maybe it's not very scary for a ghost until the end when he possesses Alfred. But that's, yeah, the ghost himself is not exactly he leaves a little bit to desire in the spooky look department.
Yeah, we talked a little bit about his I think part of the reason why he looks the way he does is his backstory being heavily influenced by the Revolutionary War. And one of the more interesting things that we see in this episode was the choice in how to reveal that story of Gentleman Jim and his backstory and how the stories of his past and how he came to be, as we say on the podcast here. And interestingly enough, Liam, one of the things that we actually talked about last week on the podcast with Monica is how, at least when the show came out and the subsequent weeks after, even as the excitement was sort of dying down, a lot of the artists that worked on the show were gracious enough to share production art and the things that they worked on as far as this show was concerned. And one of the artists by the name of William Joseph Dunn, you can follow him on Instagram at Art of WJD, free plug for Mr. Dunn. But they posted actually a up close shot of the portrait that hangs in the mansion of Jim Craddock, and then talked about a little bit about what went into the decision making as far as the series of paintings that are used to tell the backstory of James Craddock. So I'll just read from his post here. It says, after he showed the portrait to Bruce Timm, and James Tucker, they decided that Craddock's backstory would be shown as a series of still paintings similar to this one. This episode was written by Mark Bernard, directed by Chris Berkeley. The Craddock portrait pose was done by Derek Charm, who you can follow at Derek Charm, another one of the artists that worked on this show. And then James Tucker himself did the actual jawline and face for the portrait of Gentleman Jim in that painting. And he said after he revealed this to Bruce and to James Tucker, they decided to go ahead and go along with a series of paintings that were also done in the same form here. So it's interesting because I think it does break up the monotony and maybe some of the ho hum of maybe the disappointment in the animation for this, because these are things that are designed to be still, and there is dimension and movement sort of the static imagery within the story that they're telling. There's sort of like a motion comic type of movement to a couple of the images, and how the dimension is created with certain items kind of being in the forefront versus the background, stuff like that. So I really like this because I think the drawings do give it sort of like a Disney type of feel, like classic Disney animation, especially the way that Gentleman Jim's face is sort of drawn, and the characterization, as well as the sort of supporting cast that you see throughout the story of how he almost loses all of his fortune and how he's gambling away his family's fortune and potentially losing the mansion and all of this. I really liked the way it reminded me of some of the ways that they would do storytelling techniques in Batman the Animated Series and other DCAU shows that kind of break up the general norm, to kind of let you know, hey, that this isn't modern. This isn't what's happening in the modern timeline. This is a flashback, and we're going to tell this story and use a different medium as a way to kind of communicate this story. I thought that was really neat, and I always appreciate when the artists decide to do something a little bit different like this.
Yeah, I think there's almost like a Disney quality to the animation, or to the
100%.
paintings, I should say, like to the character designs in these paintings. I love that. I think it feels so different, but again, you're evoking like a different era. So I think it works to use a slightly different art style for those, and because it's not necessarily literally meant to be an interpretation of what actually happened, you're seeing it through the art of the era sort of thing. Which I think is a really neat touch on that as well. And yeah, I think it's and we already talked about the way those paintings are then sort of intertwined into the episode where as Lucius and Craddock are about to sign the papers, and then here comes bursting out of the Gentleman Jim portrait on the wall is the ghost. I think is a really great visual gag as well. So yeah, it's a really unique way to tell that story. And I thought it was more effective than if they just done like stills, or if it was like Bruce looking at old pictures in a black and white notebook or something. It wouldn't have maybe felt, or even if we had seen like a fully animated version, I don't necessarily know that it would have had as much impact. It's definitely, I think, one of the more visually memorable beats of the episode.
Yeah, absolutely. It does, like I said, it breaks up the monotony a little bit. It makes it look interesting and does have a little bit of a charm to it. I also love just the story that it just kind of came from this single idea, and Bruce and James Tucker kind of let the artist run with this idea and tell the story, kind of altering how the visualization of the backstory would go here. So that's definitely the highlight for me, I think. Again, are some of the foreshadowing we talked about. I love the scene with Harvey hurling the phone or the paperweight or whatever it is across the room and smashing the glass in his poster, and you kind of see it's over one side of his face. So we're getting the foreshadowing with that. I think the possession of Alfred is really terrifying at times. The fact that he breaks through the possession for a moment to yell "kill me" is horrifying. Like that's a terrifying trope, and the way that his eyes kind of return to normal and then once again kind of spark that disgusting blue color are is really really great. I think just trying to think if there's anything else here as far as visuals are concerned here. Oh, I would be remiss not to mention. So, the librarian's name is Wilma, and she looks like Wilma Flintstone.
I had that in my notes as well. The hairstyle and the little necklace. I was like, oh my gosh, that's that's
So
such a funny.
somebody thought it was cute. Somebody thought it was cute that Wilma was the name of or somebody designed this character, Wilma the librarian, and they were like, "Yep, we're just gonna make her Wilma Flintstone in the DC or in this Batman Cape Crusader."
That was a great gag. I did have that in my notes as well. That's a funny gag. And then I think the last thing on my notes were just that final beat there, the final battle between Alfred and Batman and Gentleman Goes First, where they think they've done it. Alfred lights the lighter and begins to burn the thing, and it looks like he disappears into this big puff of smoke, only for it to then make a beeline for Alfred and possess him, and the Alfred getting these big blue eyes and trying to stab Batman with the batarang is that's a kind of a fun final beat there for the episode. And then you get that one image of when he's being when he's burning up literally, as Batman tells him to go back to hell, as he's the flames are engulfing him, and then you see the sort of zombified decaying remains of his face under the mask. I think is a pretty crazy visual as well.
Yeah, that sequence I mean, they use that in one of I think in the trailer for the show too. So that thing is absolutely terrifying. Very very gory horror movie. I mean, this whole thing has exorcism vibes at the end. You got all that horror movie lore that you kind of meld in there, and this idea of this guy's face melting off, and you getting this super close up look at it. Very very interesting. For all those reasons, I ended up giving animation a 6 out of 10. I think there are some really high highs for the highlights. As we talked about the homage, the throwback with the paintings. I think that's great. Some of the visuals here do stand out, but overall, just there's so much stiffness, and you have the characters just need to move better in this second season. Like that's the one thing that I think big thing that needs to happen is there just has to be more movement. A character cannot be still on screen minus their lips and their eyes blinking, their lips moving and their eyes blinking for 5 to 7 seconds. It makes it look very cheap to me. So unfortunately that brings my score down a little bit lower than we've had in the past. What about you?
Yeah, I went with a 7. I think this is one of the more visually strong episodes that we've covered of this show to date. But unfortunately, again, Batman, I think the fight in the mansion with Batman, where he's just completely kind of outclassed and getting knocked around, and then certainly the bit where his fist goes through the face and his hand ices over, I think is neat. So they pulled out some cool stuff. Like I said, that final bit at the end with Alfred's possession is pretty neat. But yeah, overall, I do tend to agree. Like I said, I do think this is maybe the best we've seen, or at least that I can remember of the ones we reviewed so far as that chase scene. And maybe some of that is the melding of the 3D animation of the Batmobile. So maybe that helps not having to rely so much on the 2D animation front. But yeah, overall, a good outing and some really cool design stuff. But yeah, still some. I definitely agree that there's still some points in where the animation just looks a little too rigid, a little too immobile, I guess.
Absolutely. All right, then let's move on to our next category, which is going to be music. And once again, Frederick Weidman, responsible for this week's soundtrack. We have three different tracks once again, Liam, that are available for this particular episode. So we have the track names of Gentleman Ghost, aptly named. And then we have Eliminating the Impossible, and then also aptly named Possessed, with the ellipsis in front of the title, as our three tracks here. So they're all available to listen to in isolation. And I actually think that the music here plays a lot into, once again, kind of picking up where I feel like some of the visuals dropped the ball for this week. There is a Gentleman Ghost theme that kind of plays right away, that has this marching sort of horn sound to it as the horse is riding up behind this armored vehicle. It then plays again later on in the end, I think in a different key, as Batman is fighting him in the graveyard. It comes back, and it may come back again in the middle too. Maybe when he's robbing the train also. So we have a consistent kind of theme there. It's heavy percussion with some deep horns that play. And then we have some more like creepy, classic sounding music that kind of plays throughout. I think the possession piece, you have some spooky choral like voices that come through that are singing these long extended notes, giving it, this very creepy feel as Alfred's being possessed and then fighting back against Batman, and Batman's fighting for Alfred's life and his own life, really, in that sequence. So I think that's really a really strong piece also. And then you have some lighter down moments, some more mood setting music with Dent in the car, and then Dent at the end kind of deciding to make the deal with the devil there. Those were the big highlights that I noticed in those three pieces. Anything that I missed that kind of stuck out to you?
No, not really. I think you covered just about all the big notes there. Pun very much intended. But yeah, I love we get I'm gonna start calling it like the Jack the Ripper instrument. I think it's the theremin or whatever that they bring in when he first appears. I think is always a nice. It's like anytime you're in like old timey London in any setting, you hear that instrument brought in, and yeah, it's always very effective at evoking that time period and letting you know that it's from a different time and place. So I liked that as well. I ended up settling on a 6 out of 10 for my music. I think it's a good solid outing for sure.
Yeah, I went just 1 point higher on my score. I went to 7 out of 10. I think that Alfred scene, obviously, it's one of the more powerful visual scenes with him being possessed, and that music that really swells there and gives you the really amps up the tension there with Alfred being possessed. I really liked that piece, and I think overall having a consistent theme there for the Gentleman Ghost that plays throughout, I really like that too. Even if it's not necessarily hummable, you recognize it as it comes in a couple times. All right, Liam, let's wrap things up with our final category of the day, which is going to be our voice actors and actresses for this week. We have the first episode that doesn't have Commissioner Gordon, and it doesn't have Bullock on it, and it doesn't have Flask on it either. So we have some of our mainstays are missing this week. No Barbara, certainly no Montoya, and no Harley, but we do have a couple of our normal and returning cast, and then a couple of newbies also.
Absolutely, some fun ones to talk about here. very briefly, we have Carrie Walgren as she's the secretary and the guard in one of the that's on the charity armored truck at the beginning. We do briefly get, speaking of DCAU regulars, Jason Marsden, the voice of Richie Foley, and Snapper Carr himself, as he's playing Gorman. That's Dent Harvey's assistant or campaign manager there. Fun to hear him show up. I think he's also one of the reporters. We have Gail Heidemann playing Wilma, the aforementioned Flintstone librarian. That's fun there. And then we'll get into we have doing a dual role here. We have Cedric Yarborough playing. He's both the voice of Rupert Thorne, and to his credit, I would not have known this until I looked at this credit. He's also the voice of Linton Midnight. They sound very different, but he has this. Tell you what, this man has some bass in his voice. Like when he shows up as Rupert Thorne, as iconic as I believe it's John Vernon who plays him on Batman the Animated Series. This version is just infinitely like more scary. Like that guy always feels like more of a blowhard. But where this one is like, oh, this guy's a killer. Like just in that brief little interaction he has with Dent, it's like, oh, this guy's creepy. Like, and then on the other side, him playing the voodoo witch doctor, Linton, Papa Midnight or Linton Midnight as he's known. Great dual role for Mr. Yarborough here.
Yeah, unsurprising that he got the call. I guess he was involved with the Justice League Crisis on Two Earths movie. He played Firestorm there. He was also in Justice League Throne of Atlantis, and then he was also in one of your favorite shows. Actually, maybe not one of my favorite shows, but a show that I liked, BoJack Horseman. Also, he played a role. So a lot of voice acting roles to his name. He's also, of course, on the Boondocks, which obviously was a huge hit for Adult Swim for a very long time. So he's got a lot of roles under his belt, and clearly has quite the range of being able to do voice acting here. So the fact that he is able to do multiple voices, comes back later on to play a voice in one of the cameos, also apparently is credited there. So we'll see what happens. What maybe he's cast in a bigger role, in a different role in season 2, or if they recast that character. But as far as this episode is concerned, boy, he plays that sleazy Rupert Thorne so well. Like you believe that he's a sleazy crime boss ready to just throw his money around to gain power. And I really want to see him get his comeuppance, and you're almost screaming at the television because you obviously know what happens to this Harvey Dent character. You're like, no, don't get into bed with him, please, don't do this. So a lot of that obviously has to go with Mr. Yarborough's performance, is just making him just like, ugh, gross.
Yes, absolutely. He is very good at his job, and that creeps us out for sure. We do have Bumper Robinson playing Lucius Fox, as well as one of the other reporters there. We've talked about him before. He's in a couple episodes of Batman Beyond. He was also he also voiced Cyborg in the Justice League Doom movie, and was on quite a few episodes of Sabrina the Teenage Witch. So. And does a lot of voice acting even now. He's good. Like, this is our first look at this version of Lucius, and where he's both like, Bruce's investment guy or securities guy, and clearly knows how to throw around a little chunk of change of himself. But he's also like, I like when he tries to like square up with Gentleman Ghost. I think that's really funny that he is incensed when I think the Gentleman Ghost refers to him as rabble, and he does not take kindly to it. So I like this version of Lucius, who, and in the brief interaction he has with Bruce, I think he doesn't know that he's Batman, but he doesn't not know, is kind of the impression I got.
Yeah, I mean, we kind of do the thing from Batman Begins with Lucius, where he knows that Bruce has this fund that's set aside from all of the other money that he lets Lucius invest and kind of spend on his behalf. and used for charitable functions and all that. And Bruce just says, he just kind of alludes to it. It's his, it's his petty cash fund. And Lucius just tells him, well, I probably don't want to know what you're doing with it, right? And Bruce confirms that. So again, yeah, we don't know that Lucius knows, but he's clearly an intelligent and observant guy who knows the ins and outs. He's of Bruce's life to the point where he knows Alfred well enough to joke and kid and have inside jokes with him about stories that Alfred has shared before. So seems like he's smart and observant and at least deep enough into Bruce's finances that he might be able to put two and two together if he so desired to. But maybe just because of the implication, he doesn't want to.
That's right. Maybe it's better left unsaid in that case. Then we do have we'll get to our villain here. Oh, actually, first we'll mention the great Diedrich Bader, our Harvey Dent for this series. It is hard because he has such a recognizable voice. And obviously he's played Batman, he's played plenty of other characters, that Zeta, of course. But yeah, I do think he's got a little like, again, like a layer of slime to his Harvey. One of the things obviously they've decided is that maybe it's Harvey is the one who's a little closer to the bad side, and maybe his other persona that's lurking in the shadows is maybe one that's more obsessed with the justice of it all. So like this version of Harvey, he's a little scummy, and in this case you could just kind of see him kind of beleaguered as the episode. You just feel the desperation in his voice building throughout the episode.
Yeah, it's great because I think we talked about it. Obviously his voice is so recognizable. Well, his Batman voice is so recognizable, and Mr. Bader's cadence is usually very I don't know. It's just kind of one note with that in a good way. Like Batman's just super serious in Brave and the Bold. So for him to kind of be a little bit lighter here, he doesn't put quite as much bass into his voice when he's delivering it. But when that emotion comes out, when he's kind of at the end of his rope and throwing things around, boy, you can really hear some of that rage come out and that bass come back into his voice there. So again, I think we talked about this maybe when we did the first 4 reviews. Like, I like having a voice that you can recognize. It's different enough where it doesn't immediately point to his version of the Dark Knight, and obviously has quite the skill to be able to kind of emote when needed here. So yeah, we obviously have more episodes here that are coming up that are going to play a role in this Harvey Dent arc to kind of wrap things up here at the end of the season. But it's a nice little showing for him here to kind of be beyond just like this skeezy guy that's hanging around GCPD. We get to see a little more emotion, and the walls come down, that he's not quite as confident as he were to let on, if in how he interacts with people in the GCPD.
Yeah, absolutely. I think he does a really good job in his limited time here. But we do have Toby Stevens playing. He plays both the Gentleman Ghost, and as we mentioned, his descendant Russell Craddock. He also is voicing him, which I guess is a little bit of a red herring there, as we mentioned, to maybe throw you off the scent as to who this could be. But folks would know him from Die Another Day, which I believe is maybe the last Pierce Brosnan James Bond film, but also from things like Hunter Killer and quite a few other groups. A lot of like one episode in a lot of different series. So a very prolific actor. Yeah, I mean, for what's asked, I mean, we've already talked about how like the story didn't exactly grip us, but as far as his, again, the anti-Robin Hood angle is kind of like, it's funny, I think, kind of in a weird way, and he kind of plays like the idea of him like begging, like telling Harvey like, no, I would never rob a man of your station, sir, and when he's fighting Batman, being like, you fight like a well-kept man, so I'll give you this chance to give up. Like, he has this weird, delusional code of honor that he's adhering to, is kind of a funny gag to throw on him. So yeah, despite our feeling like maybe the visual and the plot maybe let us down, I think Mr. Stevens does an admirable job of what's asked of him.
Yeah, I would agree completely. I mean, he is classically British, so it's not a fake British accent. We know that. So it comes out very naturally at that, and he does have that sort of aristocratic way, as you said, of kind of delivering some of those lines and making him seem like he's better than everyone else, which is obviously what this character specifically is trying to get across. But yeah, I think he does a fine job. He also plays his own offspring, his nephew, I believe, also. So he has a little bit more exposition to do as he's telling the story of the Craddock family there, which is interesting. But yeah, I think, interestingly enough, he's so British, he actually has played James Bond in like radio dramas and stuff like that, according to his Wikipedia. So
Nice.
yeah, he's at least the voice of James Bond too. So that tells you, I think, his acting chops are kind of on a certain level in order to be considered for that role in any form or fashion.
For sure, absolutely. Definitely has that appropriate British drawl to him. And speaking of which, we have Jason Watkins playing Alfred Pennyworth in this episode. Again, this is kind of a big episode. Of course, Jason, who has done things like The Crown and quite a few other live action roles to his credit. Yeah, I think him and we'll just talk about them together since they're sort of so interlinked in this episode. Hamish Linklater as Batman slash Bruce Wayne. I think they're both. Again, this is like we're finally getting something to sink our teeth into. It's been a slow burn, as we've talked about, with the Bruce and Alfred relationship, and obviously this is a big moment. Obviously, throughout the episode, there's kind of a little bit of not quite bickering, but sort of back and forth between them, both on the ghost end, and then Alfred getting in his little digs about like, well, you never asked, that's why you don't know, you don't know this stuff about me, and then obviously the culmination though really is that those final few minutes, both when Alfred's possessed and sort of begging Bruce to kill him, so that he doesn't kill Bruce, and then again that sort of emotion that finally the dam breaks a little bit, and we see this Batman really emote in this way for the first time to this point in the series. So Mr. Watkins and Mr. Linklater playing off of each other, a big part of that big cathartic moment for our characters.
Yeah, absolutely. I think again we get to see a little bit of the curtain pulled back a little bit here, as we typically. I mean, he's not afraid to emote with Bruce, but we see a little bit more. He's a little more comfortable, obviously, interacting with Lucius, and then we get to see him. He is still obviously Bruce's butler, so he does have sort of that subservient response to the things that Bruce says, as ridiculous as they are. But I do like that he goes toe to toe. We did not mention, by the way, but there is the scene where Bruce is first sort of trying to put the clues together. Both he and Batman quotes Sir Arthur Conan Doyle from Sherlock Holmes during this very Sherlock Holmes like scene between the two of them, where Batman's playing Holmes and Alfred's playing Watson, which I think we've discussed on maybe one of the other reviews, that's very much this type of dynamic that they have here, that Alfred is sort of the buffoonish sidekick that doesn't see anything, and Batman, or at least that's Batman's perception, and Batman is the world's greatest detective, and sees things that Alfred couldn't see. But here we have quite the reversal in that scene, where Bruce talks about, I think the line he quotes is we have enough people here, ghosts aren't welcome, or something like that, I think is the line.
Mm-hmm.
And then Alfred retorts with a line about how if we eliminate everything that is impossible, then what remains must be the possible, or something like that. It's very much retorting back to Bruce, and kind of volleying back to him with his own quote from Sherlock Holmes, as to sort of hammer home this idea that actually, well, you're kind of going through everything here and eliminating this. So I loved how that line was delivered. And again, I think at the end there, that when he tells Batman to kill him, is one of the most haunting deliveries to a line that I can remember in a Batman cartoon, of just like, you do not expect you don't expect that to come out of a character's mouth, and let alone Alfred to Batman, and it's pretty powerful. So yeah, great work there by our actor.
Absolutely. So with that all in mind, there, I think that that can bring us to our scores here. I think I settled on a 7 out of 10 for my voice score. I think certainly, like I said, our Batman and Alfred this week certainly raised the bar a little bit, and like I said, got to delve into something a little deeper this week, along with Mr. Yarborough as Rupert Thorne. I think those are my standouts for this one. So yeah, I think a good solid outing this week.
Yeah, I went with the same exact score, 7 out of 10 for my voice acting as well. I do think Mr. Linklater is really coming into his own here, as we mentioned. He plays it so even keel, which I think is exactly what this character is supposed to be like. He sounds so robotic in so many of those Batman scenes that when he does have those little moments where that breaks and he has the emotion that comes out, whether it's the emotion of surprise or anger or frustration, it really stands out. I think as a great opportunity for him to show. So yeah, a solid. I think solid by our entire cast this week. So sevens from both of us is maybe not a surprise. All right, Liam, well, that will begin to wrap things up here. So let's total up our scores, and totaling everything up on my end. And I think we're probably going to end up with the same score here because we just flip-flopped in categories. I end up with a 24 out of 40. What about you?
Yeah, and although I think we disagreed on a point or two, I ended up with the exact same final score of 24 out of 40.
Hard to gauge these, as we talked about last week with Monica, as far as rewatchability is concerned. It's part of this. It's part of the serial type nature of this first season here. There's obviously threads that are laid down here with Dent. You kind of have to watch this one to understand where we get to by the end of this season with Harvey and Thorne being in bed together. I think there's also some good points here that we're talking about. If we're looking at the overarching story of Batman and what his season 1 arc is kind of recognizing, separating. He separated Bruce and Batman so much that he's not able to have human emotions. He's such an animal at this point, such a creature that he's created, that he's not able to have human emotions, that you're starting to see some of those emotions slowly leak out in certain places. So I think this is another kind of stepping stone towards that's kind of important also. So while maybe it isn't maybe the first one that I would rush to show somebody, I think if you're watching through this, skipping it, you're going to be missing some of the important threads that are followed up on.
Agreed.
All right, Liam, well, that'll begin to wrap things up for this week. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. Don't forget, we love your support for the podcast. We have several different ways to do that. Our favorite ways to do so are the free ways. You can do that via following us on social media at DCAU Review, Twitter, X, Instagram, and a bunch of those other social media platforms. Check us out. We're pretty much at DCAU Review everywhere. We're also on YouTube. That's where you can get new episodes each and every week. So if you can, we're still trying to build our YouTube channel following. Please head over to YouTube, search DCAU Review in the channel section, and follow our channels there, or just check out the notes here in the podcast notes here. You can check those out in the show notes. The link should be posted there. You can just go over there and subscribe and like the videos. Even if you don't listen there, that helps us a lot. So we appreciate that. Speaking of which, if you're on another one of those platforms and you listen to us there, subscribe to us. If it lets you leave a 5-star review like it does on Spotify or Apple Podcast, we'll certainly take that and appreciate that. That helps us a lot. You can do it right there in the app for both of those. And then, of course, you can, if you're listening on Spotify, you can answer our question of the week. If you're listening on Apple, you can leave a blurb about the podcast. And if we read your review from Apple Podcasts on the air, we'll send you a little thank you gift just for taking the time to do so. You can also support the podcast a little bit more directly monetarily if you head over, as we mentioned at the top of the program, at buymeacoffee.com/DCAU Review.
That's right. And so we do have a question from Zach, one of our regular monthly supporters, always asks great question. And technically, this is for last week's review, Cal, but I think since we were recording a little bit in advance, a little bit ahead of our usual schedule, that's more on us than on Zach. So we wanted to make sure we answered the question here this week. And this is regarding the stress of her regard. And Zach's question is, after spending time with both Bruce Wayne and profiling Batman for the police, do you think that Harleen Quinzel, this Caped Crusader version, does she know that Batman and Bruce Wayne are one in the same?
It's a good question. I think we briefly touched on this when we were talking with Monica. She's incredibly intelligent. She's incredibly perceptive, and generally speaking, she noted that Batman has the childhood trauma. I think this could be a twist that we see if she does come back in season 2, that she's kind of put 2 and 2 together. I think it's intentionally left ambiguous. If you're looking for my personal opinion, I think it's one of those things, if we're using comic book logic, just like, nobody can tell that Superman is Clark Kent, or whatever logic you want to use for our this person is this person's secret identity. I think that maybe for whatever reason she wouldn't believe it. Maybe because she has seen him and seen him be a little bit more outgoing than what Batman is. Batman's not exactly a wordsmith when it comes to his communication skills. Bruce, on the other hand, does have a little bit of a more suave nature to him. And I think Bruce being able to compartmentalize and kind of create this persona of Bruce Wayne, I think I would give him the credit to be able to kind of keep that up and stay one step ahead of even the smartest of his rogues here. So I'm gonna just say no. She could probably, if she interacted a little more with Batman, I would say yes. But I think just in the short little interactions that she has, I don't think she's able to necessarily profile him. Otherwise, I think we would have seen her maybe go after him a little more directly in her episode. What about you, Liam?
Yeah, I definitely I like the way you've laid it out. Yeah, I think there could be some connecting threads. Like she definitely mentions, as you said, the childhood trauma that Batman must have suffered to end up doing what he does. But she was also shown, much like her opinion of all the other rich men of Gotham, seemingly felt that Bruce was not really worth her time at a certain point. So yeah, I think I think maybe there is always that deniability where people think so little of Bruce Wayne as a person that they couldn't possibly see him as this heroic figure or this brave person. So he does always have that the kind of foppish playboy persona to maybe concede some of that. But certainly if Harley is back in a season 2, it wouldn't be the biggest one. So I'll say no, just for the point of just to have to go out on a limb and give a definitive answer to Zach's question. But yeah, if we get a season 2 and she's put it together and that becomes a big plot point, well, let's just say it wouldn't be the biggest surprise, but I'll take the L in that case.
Liam, we are going to continue next week with another review of Batman Caped Crusader, as we are all month long. As we said, we had the psychological thriller and creepiness of Harley Quinn in week 1. This week we had ghosts. How can we continue this spookiness theme all through the month of October? How could we top a ghost?
That's right. Well, but there's only one way. It's a guy in a fedora. All right, it's moving target next week. The villain Onomatopoeia, and what's scarier than a guy who tries to kill you and makes weird cartoon sounds with his mouth while he tries? That's scary.
It's very spooky. Yep, it's terrifying. I would be terrified. He wears a mask and a fedora. Like, that's his whole getup. If I saw that guy on a street, I would run in the opposite direction, screaming like a girl. Or like a guy. Oh man, can't wait. Gonna be a fun week, Liam. Actually, spoiler alert. First time we watched this through, this is one of my favorite episodes, so interested in revisiting this with a more critical lens to see if it holds up and remains one of my favorite episodes. Can't wait to check that one out with you next week. But until then, I'm Cal.
And I'm Liam.
And we will talk to you on the next episode of the DCAU Review.
Bye-bye.